You are now tuned into the sounds of Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime. You are now tuned in to Big Nate Sports Talk, the show that's on all the time, anytime. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for all content. And now, ladies and gentlemen, your host, Nathan Snell. Bring your sports game with Big Nate Sports Talk.
And thank you, Mr. Anthony Handy, for that lovely introduction. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Big Nate Sports Talk podcast. I hope you're all well. Hope you're having a great evening so far. This is episode 9, season 13 of Big Nate Sports Talk podcast. In this episode, we are recapping the Washington Commanders defeating the Dallas Cowboys in their season finale. Before we get into that, there's a few things I would like to say up front. As I stated in the previous episode, episodes will be recorded until post Super Bowl. I also forgot to bring up Roquan Smith's contract. He signed a 5-year deal worth $100 million. He's now the highest paid linebacker in NFL for the NFL. Roquan Smith, really quick, has definitely made some big differences on the defensive end. He is a playmaker. I think that he's upgraded the defense immensely. He's a side-to-side line linebacker, great coverage skills. Since his arrival, I think as a defensive unit, we've allowed no more than 16 points twice in 9 games. And you also see Patrick Queen, who I now think is playing at his natural position. Let's keep it real. I think you had to re-sign him. I don't think you could have gone another year where you're letting another linebacker walk. They let Judon walk. They've let C.J. Mosley walk. Zadarius Smith. I don't think you could go into another year and letting a top-tier linebacker walk. I do think that with the signing, I think that now possibly opens up the door to Frank, so that way they can start, because now everything's on the table with that one. Now, the Washington Commanders, they defeated the Dallas Cowboys 26-6. What a great way to end the season. Unfortunately, actually, you know what? Before we get into that video, there is a little snippet I do want to play for you guys. Hang tight.
Mediocre team and Big D. That's what makes this funny. How about the Cowboys? How about the Cowboys? Some way, somehow, when it counts, just wait. They will let you down. The accident, they will mess it up. Just wait. The accident, they will let you down. Just wait. The accident, waiting to happen. It will happen. I'm predicting they're gonna be irrelevant. I'm predicting an absolute embarrassment for the last decade and a half. They make me laugh. All the talent that they have is unbelievable, man. Big D, teasing you. This is what they do. Walking through, we show up on cue. Accident, something will go wrong. The accident of the big Jumbotron. Accident, I recognize it's a black cat running around that franchise. Hey, with accident, they will mess it up. Just wait. The accident, they will let you down. Just wait. The accident, the accident, the accident, waiting to happen. It will happen. How about them Cowboys?
Man, it was a good win. Where do I begin with it? I mean, we're at home. It was our final home game. I think he had to win this game just in terms of pride. I mean, there was nothing really to say other than good win. First, I'll start off with this. The great Sonny Jerkson got to see his jersey. I mean, in one of the suites, had a whole bunch of memorabilia of his time as a Washington quarterback. It was nice to unveil the frame, number 9 jersey from his suite. And I believe it was Billy Kilmar that was with him. And that was good. I'm happy to see that he's doing well. It's good to see that they're continuing to honor Washington legends. He's the 4th player in history to be honored, to have their jersey retired. This past few weeks ago was the great Sean Taylor. May he rest in peace. But I mean, other than that, where do I be? Sam Howell. I've been very keen on this, and shout out to Sean Spencer, Will Kramer. They can speak on this. I'm not fond of throwing rookie quarterbacks into the fire. He was put in the starting quarterback position after Carson Wentz, who mildly disappointed, and we'll get into that in a little bit later in this episode. That was the 8th quarterback in Ron Rivera's 3 years here in Washington that was behind center. He connected to Terry McLaurin, 16-yard touchdown. His first NFL pass was a botch snap on a punt in their own territory. There was a mistake he did make. He was in the second quarter. He threw off his back foot. The Captains in triple coverage. Was it a good throw? No, because he threw off his back foot. One thing they teach you in quarterback one-on-one drills, you never throw off your back foot. If you're uncertain about a certain decision when you're in the pocket trying to make a pass, you can't find anybody. I've learned this watching the great John Gruden and other great quarterbacks. You just throw it out of bounds. So that was a very interesting. That was interesting, but he made up for it. I mean, he settled down after that. I mean, he was 11-19, 169 yards. Actually had 5 carries for 35 yards and had a 9-yard touchdown on an option play. That was pretty good. The defense, I thought the defense played well. I mean, Dallas, I'm concerned for Dallas from this standpoint. I think offensively, they have to be the reason they win in this playoffs. Coming into this game in run defense, actually, let me say this. We controlled the aerial attack. Dak Prescott only had 14 completions on 37 attempts. He threw for 128 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. I do think throughout the game we made him uncomfortable, and I credit the defense. I mean, it's not the first 48. It's not the first 48. It's the whole 60 minutes of the game. I thought everybody did well. This is a Dallas Cowboys offense that's been averaging 35 points a game since Dak came back in Week 7. Only had 4 of 18 third downs. And I think that you see the growth. You see what Jack DeReal has done on that defensive side. I still need some adjusting. We need to make some additions in the offseason. But I mean, other than that, the special teams for Dallas has continued to be very interesting. They're making mistakes. We know Turpin's a Pro Bowler. Mahar and Anger, they've been solid. Look, everyone's entitled to have a bad day. It happens. But their first possession was on a 4th and 2 on your own 33-yard line. Can't happen. You got to be aware of those things. And again, you're going to be against Tom Brady. I think it's going to be keen to really see how this team looks against Tom Brady and the Bucs. Tampa's not the same team they have been the last 2 years. They're 8-9, heading to the playoffs, and now they're trying to get certain players, playmakers back healthy, whether it's on the O-line, defensive line, defense, doesn't matter. I think that Tampa has the impact players it needs to win because it's the same Dallas team that lost at home. I think it's going to come down to the offense. The defense, too. This is a defense that we all were raving about at the beginning of the year for Dallas. And I think the key for me is it's going to come down to them executing. And I think you have to make adjustments on the offensive side of the ball. If you're Dallas. Also, too, what I thought was really interesting is for Washington on the offensive side of the ball, we won the battle in the trenches. Dallas came into this game Sunday. They are ranked number 21 against the run. And I said that was the key. I think you had to beat them running the ball in the previous video. You didn't have Brian Gibson, Brian Robinson Jr., and Antonio Gibson. You had Jarrett Patterson, and you had Jonathan Williams. Both combined it for 41 carries on 151 yards and a touchdown. JP, 78 yards on 17 carries. Sam Howell had 5 carries for 35 yards. When you look at the running game, you credit that to the offensive line. They made the right holes. And this is a Dallas run. This is a run defense for Dallas that's not keen. They're more of a pass rushing defense. On the other side of the ball, Dallas only mustered 64 yards on 27 carries, and that if you do the math, that's about 2.5 yards per carry. Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard had a whopping 29 yards on 15 carries.
This is some bad stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I just don't know. This is ridiculous. Oh, Lord.
And, to say, and listen, it's disappointing. We're not in the playoffs. I was really keen on us beating Cleveland watching them as an AFC rival in Baltimore. That was a Cleveland team that had nothing to play for. That was very disappointing to Carson Wentz. And a couple things did happen today. The Washington Commanders had their end of the season press reviewer, Scott Turner, was fired as offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. He felt as though it was the best time to move in a different direction. He talked about it. He did not live up to expectations. I think it was a fresh start. This was after 2 years in Carolina as a quarterback coach. They were united together. And I think under his tenure as offensive coordinator, you've had 8 coaches. Some of that's on him, and some that's on the quarterbacks, and also some that's on what you've put out there. He's never really made the offense stout. I think we've always been around somewhere around the 20s. I think this year we were like 24th in play calling and offense. Even though we did beat them, when you have players coming out and voicing they're dissatisfied with the play calling. I think I would somewhere reading the Washington Post, Logan Thomas was one of them. Scoring more points. I think a lot of it that can't be ignored. And I do think that it would have been nice, and I'm curious to see who he'll hire. For me, Scott Turner was number 1 on my list. The one thing I have been keen on, and I'm going to say this also too, with the end of the season for the Baltimore Ravens. The one thing, ladies and gentlemen, that we have to understand in this league, you must maintain consistency. Consistency is you have a game plan. Everybody is keen on the game plan. Everyone knows what they're doing. You can't 1 week play up to competition and play down to certain competition. There were games this year where I would watch them look like a playoff team and then look like a deer in headlights. Keen examples. The Detroit Lions, the Minnesota Vikings. There's a lot of things that can't be ignored. I look at the offensive line. There was a lot of injuries. There's certain guys that are playing out of position. There are some guys you were expecting to step up. You did see some of the young guys in there, some of the rookies like Chris Paul and others get their opportunity because you want to see who pretty much is to see who's going to be out there next year. And I think there are some guys that played well that you will see come back. But for me, he was number 1 on my list. Consistency is important. For me, I just think that when you've had 8 quarterbacks, I think that's a problem. And and I'm just going to say it for the record. Listen, I was completely wrong on Carson Wentz. I will concede that point. But one thing I will not concede on, and that we can all agree to disagree on, is that going into the Cleveland game, you could tell he had no confidence. When your coach comes out and goes, I'm basically paraphrasing it, but it was almost as if he didn't know who to start. We're going to put the best player out there. No, what he should have said was, no, this is a guy that we picked up $28 million. This is the guy we traded for. He's a $28 million option. I made the decision that I want this guy here. This is the guy I'm rolling with. He's had good games. Has he made mistakes? Absolutely. But he had no confidence. I mean, you had fans within the Washington community after the first 4 weeks, after we went 1-4, you were calling for the man's job. And for me, I didn't like that. I really try to be fair and give players a chance. I mean, 1 year, I could see if he was here 2 or 3 years. But after one season to throw in the towel, I get it. He disappointed. The way he played against Cleveland, I'm not going to deny what I saw. He played horrible. I will concede that point. But that doesn't give everybody else a pass. If you had a healthy offensive line, if you were consistent on offense, those things matter. I mean, those are things that we can't be denied. And when you look at it,
I can't defend that. What do you want me to say to that?
and I think that we all know that right now that Dan Snyder's one that's not maybe he fired one, but we all know new ownership is coming, and I'm hoping it's soon. I really, for me, I think it's best for the franchise. I think it's best for the city. I think it's best for the DMV, honestly, because you just, of all the things that have happened in DC and with Dan Snyder as the owner, it just makes you just go, wow. It kind of gives me Peter Angelo's vibes in a sense, kind of micromanaging the team, and just not doing enough to make your team, not to make your team well. He didn't even show up at this. He didn't even show up at the game, which that tells me he's done. I mean, years of scandals, controversies, investigations. Listen, it's time. It's time for a new chapter in Washington. Me personally, I listen. The offensive line this year was disappointing. They allowed 48 sacks.
I can't defend that. What do you want me to say to that?
And some of that injuries, but listen, injuries that should never be an excuse. There were some guys like Andrew Noel, for example, that had there were some bright spots. I thought Ty Turner, I thought he would have been a big pickup, but he disappointed. Now that changes my mock draft for sure. I think you need to fix up your secondary. William Jackson III, you traded him to Pittsburgh. Brandon St. Just, St. Juice, excuse me. He, I think, blossomed this year. Injuries. Cam Curl missed 5 games. And then also, too, like the quarterback situation. I stated, I can see the point. Carson Wentz did not exceed expectations. I will concede that point. I was wrong on that. Taylor Heineke's a free agent. Don't know if he'll be back in Washington, but Carson Wentz has a $28 million cap hold, and most likely they will use that. For me, I don't know now watching Carson Wentz, who I think this was his last chance to prove to the NFL world that he can be a starter in this league. I don't really know how to feel about a Derek Carr or a Jimmy Garoppolo or an Aaron Rodgers in Washington. Those are just guys that come off the top of my head because Derek Carr, who I think they're scapegoating in Las Vegas, and Jimmy Garoppolo, they've made it clear that Trey Lance is the guy, even though I think Brock Purdy should be the starter next year, because I'm just not sold on Trey Lance. And then Aaron Rodgers, I don't know what to expect from Aaron Rodgers. I feel like he's going to pull a Brett Favre. When I mean a Brett Favre, there was a few years ago, I think it was the last year in Green Bay, and he couldn't make up his mind in terms of wanting to be traded, the whole protect my legacy and his ego, and he got traded to Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken, and then he went to the Jets. Aaron Rodgers could potentially end up in Las Vegas. I don't know. So there's a lot of things you're going to figure out on that part. And then also, too, I'm looking at, Daron Payne. I think they should franchise tag him. He had an 11.5 sacks this year. Fitter and Matthias. Mathis. I mean, he had a season-ending injury week 1, and I think with not having Chase Young there, I think he stepped up. I One thing about defensive linemen, they can be very, very interesting in terms of their needs and wants of a contract. He could probably be around $20 million, and I'm scared, but I'm confident they'll re-sign him. And then another thing too, the press conference. I listened to the press conference thing on YouTube, and a couple things that stood out to me. There's going to be some questions at quarterback. Sam Howell, we all know there. Carson Wentz played 7 games. He didn't play at all. And then Taylor Heinicke's a free agent. I mean, they kind of tiptoed around it, but I think they do need to address the quarterback position. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick, 2021, had a season-ending injury with his hip, and then you trade for Carson, who I think was scapegoated last year in Indy. I thought coming to Washington, I thought would have given him it would have given him a new set of perspective on. I thought I would have seen a different Carson. Didn't see that. And hey, I was wrong on that. And inconsistent. That doesn't help any football team. But he's right there on my list, number 3. And I do think they need some depth. As I stated, they need to work on depth. They also talked about joint practices, which I'm not really a fan of. They could come up a little up the I-95. We can definitely have a joint practice at the Battle of the DMV, Battle of the Beltways. But also too, I thought also too what stood out to me in the presser was the need for offensive line. They really wanted to address that. I could tell Mr. Mayhew really was keen on that. Last 2 years, we have been decimated with injuries. And I mean, it's a ship that needs to go back to port. I mean, it's listing on starboard and port side. It's being held together with tape and glue. You had Trey Turner going in and out the lineup. Sadiq Charles, Sam Kasimi playing right guard, left guard. And I think we had a multitude of injuries. And I think the biggest thing is, one, you got to make sure everyone gets healthy. And number 2, you just got to know who you want. I still think Eric Flowers should still be on this team. I was surprised that Baltimore didn't sign him. I thought he was a very good run guard, in my opinion. But to finish the year the way we did, I'm okay with it. I do see more for us next year. I definitely think it changes what I see with the mock draft. I mean, we're 500. Another year, 8-8-1. So some things just slipped out of our grasp. We know what needs to be fixed. I'm confident that those things will be addressed. It was a up and down season, but I will say what you saw this year, I think you'll see differently. My hope is that there's a little bit more accountability, and there's a lot more letting guys know, like, hey, like, this is what I brought you here for. I thought I would have saw that with Carson. Didn't see that. I thought I would have seen Scott. Ron reminds Scott why I brought you here. Didn't see that. That's what I think Washington should focus on in the offseason. So let's go into our last subject of the night.
Incoming
Final
message.
Thoughts are running through my mind. Someone took some time to find a minute or two to organize.
You know, both these teams, the Ravens and the Commanders, both, I'd say for the most part, really, they showed their flaws, but they've shown growth. I think that the sky's the limit for both teams, particularly Washington. I see the steps forward, but I do think that at some point with new ownership, I probably would reckon there'd be a new head coach. I love Ron, but there's a lot of things that he has to fix. I think I would like to know the input of others in the front office other than him and Mayhew. I know Jason Wright would definitely have to say. But it's going to be really interesting to see what this offseason looks like. As I stated, I was wrong on Carson Wentz. That's all I'm going to say. I guaranteed us beating Cleveland. Didn't happen. Threw 3 picks. Disgusting. Chase Young. Hopefully he builds off this year, even though he was injured and didn't play. And I don't fault him or Washington for not playing him right away. You want to make sure that he's 100%, not just physically, but mentally, coming off an injury like that. But there's a lot that has to be done for Washington. And I'm really curious. I'm really keen on seeing how this offseason goes. I'm confident in the work that Mr. Mayhew, Ron, and even Jason Wright will do. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a new era in Washington next year. But if I had to guess, I would reckon Taylor Heineke being re-signed. They could. I mean, I think they could go after somebody, but I don't know. So I mean, it's all the free agency is so far away right now because we're getting ready for the playoffs. So that's it for the Washington Commanders for now. I do think with this season it definitely changed by mock draft. I had them drafting a tight end. Now I'm really stuck. Now between I just did my list, redid it again. They need secondary. They need offensive line. They need some linebackers too, because we're running with Cole Holcomb and David Mayo, and that's a problem to me. So we got to work on some depth. But those are right now my 3 draft needs for Washington. Now let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Be tuned in for future episodes. As I stated, this episode, along with season 8, will be uploaded to go live tomorrow. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for Excuse me. I apologize. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. This episode with Maryland basketball, and also to be on the lookout for a video with the NFL Wild Card Weekend, and we'll see you then. Have a good night. Peace. Stay up.
Living for weekends, wishing I could take a break from this world. Running on a hamster wheel, but searching for something I can't feel. I just wanna be a lost girl and fly
Incoming message.
Thank you for tuning in to Big Nate Sports Talk. If you enjoyed that episode and you want to see more content, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bring your sports game on Big Nate Sports Talk. It's on all the time, anytime.
Thank you. And you help me retain my sanity. Thank you. I want to thank you. And I want to thank you. All I want to do is say thank you for everything.